Now, many consider the U.S. and China bilateral relationship to be the most important in the entire world. Virginia Kamsky is one of them. As chairman and CEO of Kamsky Associates, her company was one of the first approved foreign advisory firms in China. I had a chance to ask her about the expectations for President Xi's visit.
I don't think there's any relationship that's more important than the U.S.-China relationship. And if you can help to build understanding, frankly, I applaud you because it is so important. The significance of his visit, the significance of the relationship, I think there will be a very important outcome. I don't think there's a lot expected. So in many ways, that's a good thing, because if there are low expectations, I actually think there are going to be outstanding results. And I would like to see it be the most historic visit of a Chinese leader to the United States. I think President Xi has done a lot of good. He's focused, there are 3 areas. Market reform has been an important area to him. His anti-corruption campaign, this had to take place. And he has done this full speed ahead, and he needs to be recognized for that. I think maybe most importantly, and if I think about 10 years from now or whatever Xi Jinping's legacy might be, I would focus on rule of law. There was a book that was published by the Shanghai Press and Publications Association, and it's called The Governance of China, or Governing China. The focus on governing, the focus on law. It's a long book to read, but I have to say that when you look at the pictures, and I think the picture tells 1,000 words, or in Chinese it's 10,000 words, it humanizes President Xi. And I think his visit, it's very, very important that the American people understand that this is a person, this is a human being. And I think that's, may sound like it's not important, but you read a lot of rhetoric, and a lot of it is terrifying.
Well, it's very terrifying, right? Because we have allegations of cybersecurity. We have significant trade disputes that are still trying to be resolved. You have a letter that was signed by 100 of the biggest company CEOs in America asking for a conclusion to on the BIT.
Right.
In terms of priority, how important is the BIT, and what is the intention of U.S. businesses?
I think the BIT is very important. I think the U.S., in a way, has been left behind. I think Australia was well ahead of the United States. Other countries have been well ahead of the United States. I don't think, it's very easy to fault China, but I think there's blame that both sides, not that there should be blame, I don't think there's been enough focus on the BIT. And the U.S. is very concerned. My understanding is that the negatives list is too long, but I understand that that may have been narrowed down. I think it's important that we do have a bilateral investment treaty.
By the way, speaking of the bilateral investment treaty, the TPP, which is sort of very different, are you in favor of that?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think the more dialogue there is, the more basis for engagement, the better. The Asia Infrastructure, International Infrastructure Bank, the fact that the U.S. Decided not to be out front, and in fact, in some ways, tried to block it.
You think it was a mistake?
I think it was a mistake. I personally, the Chinese always say, well, go in the confa, my personal point of view, is that it was a mistake, and I have let my views be known.
Well, you're not the only one. I mean, other people have. In fairness, other people have come out. Other people have come out and say that it was a mistake.
Yeah.
And whether you're pro the deal or anti the deal, it's still the response. A lot of people have been very critical of that, from the White House in particular. And speaking of the White House, President Obama only has another 18 months before he begins his retirement plan. He's probably looking forward to it too. The next President of the United States, China is going to be probably a priority number 1, 2, or 3 in some way, shape, or form. What advice would you give to the next administration, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican?
That's a very good question. I think it's important that we have somebody in the White House advising the president who has knowledge of China. And I think that there's been a dearth of that. You need to be sensitive to the culture. I think it's helpful. Some people are opposed to having someone that's bilingual advising the president. I think if someone makes the effort to learn the language, it shows that they care about the culture, they care about the relationship. And that should not be underestimated. So I would want to make sure that whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, that you have somebody who's deeply steeped in China and cares deeply about the relationship.